Hey everyone, and welcome back to Salesforce Mojo. Today we're going to be talking about guest access and checkout. Now this is going to be one exclusively for the D2C, also known as B2C or B2B2C template. So if you've ever wondered how to actually get guest users to be able to see your products, but then actually allow them to complete checkout all the way together, we're going to be going through step by step exactly how to do this and some of the tips you'll need along the way. Now, before we get into actually going into setting this up, I want to set the stage with what actually we're going to be doing here. In order to get guests to come into your site and be able to eventually check out, there's some store settings and some Experience Cloud settings that we're going to have to configure in order for this to be enabled. Second, there are a couple objects that we're going to need to provide read access to the profile that we're going to set up here in a moment, along with some field level security on those objects. Third one, we're going to have to set up some sharing rules to be able to share with our guest users and enable them to see the catalog and other objects. And fourth, we need to enable a couple of very specific things in checkout to enable your guest user to successfully be able to proceed through that. So with that being set, let's go forward and actually get this configured. Now there is one thing I wanted to just clarify before we moved forward into actually configuring this. It might be self-explanatory with the name of this video, but this is only for B2C storefronts. This is not for B2B, either Aura or LWR. This is B2C. And we'll do a video in the future about some of the basics of B2C and the different models, but this is for that storefront alone. And with that, let's actually get into the configuration here. Now the first place that we're going to start here is by going over to administration. And in this storefront, I've already enabled all of this, but I'll walk you through all the steps here it will take to actually get guest checkout working here. And the first thing we need to do is go over into administration. We need to go to buyer access. And if we scroll down to buyer access, you can see there's a guest browsing down here. Now this is the first step in order to get checkout working. You have to actually get the guest browsing working so people can go to your products and then eventually add them to a cart and be able to move through checkout. But if you're coming here for the first time, you'll see this as clicking enable here. And once you click enable, you'll be able to scroll down and you'll see a couple of different sections here, which we'll walk through now. And once you've enabled that, you'll see that a guest buyer profile gets created for you. And this guest buyer profile is what is assigned to all of the carts that come in to your store. So that's kind of the basics there. The next section is how long it takes for a cart to expire. By default, it's 7 days. However, you can change this up and down so that it expires faster or possibly longer as well. The next thing that you need to do is you need to assign your profile access to a group. And if you click assign here, you'll be able to find it. I've already assigned it, so it's not showing up. But if I come over here to my buyer group and go over to related, I can see that I've provided Tiny Homes B2C guest profile access to the buyer group that I'm on here as a member. And if I click into here, you can see that this is a little bit of a unique object here. This is a guest buyer profile. So a little bit different than what we've used in the past. But you will need to set that up. Once you have that assigned, that kind of gives the structure to give the person access to all the price books and entitlements and everything inside of the store. Once you do that though, you will need to enable a couple of things inside of Experience Cloud, as we mentioned earlier. So you'll go and click this, go to Builder. Now once this opens up, the first thing you'll do is you'll come down here to Settings, and you'll see underneath the General tab, there's a Public Access checkbox here. We want guest users to see and interact with the site without logging in. So we definitely want that. We'll click the checkbox here. You'll see that it's linked our guest user profile automatically. So we don't need to do anything there, but you will need to check this and then publish it afterwards. And once you've done that, you will want to stay here and jump over to administration because there's a little bit of configuration we need to do on this end as well. Now, once this loads, we'll go down to preferences. And we want to check the box here to allow guest users access to public APIs because we will need this in order to proceed through checkout and carts. So we'll want this checked. And the next thing you should do is you should go down to your record ownership here and see who your default owner is. by default, it'll be your user, but if you're working in a production instance, it might be someone else's user. This should be the admin or an admin user or some user who has admin permissions assigned here as a default owner, because when you create carts and orders from checkout, you need that user to be able to be assigned to those records. So you likely don't want it to be your personal user unless you're in a dev instance like I am testing this, because then all the carts and all the order summaries and everything that gets created around it will be assigned to you, and you probably don't want that. So that's the next thing you'll need to do. From here, now that we have all of the administration here, no, don't forget to click the save here. I've done that a couple of times. It's down here, it doesn't automatically save for you. Once we've done all that, you will need to jump back over to your administration section here, and there's a little handy button here that says go to profile. So we'll go here next because this is where we're going to provide object and field level security access. So let's actually hop over to a slide I've pre-prepared, which will help you understand all the objects that need to provide access. So as we go and set this up, I'm going to show one of these just so you guys can see, what that looks like and the interaction there. But on the left-hand side here, we have all the objects that you need to go through and actually provide read access. So that's catalog, categories, media, so you can actually see images, locations, products, product category products, stores, and store catalogs. All of these you need read access so the guest user can actually see everything as they navigate around. And on the right-hand side, this is field level security on two of these objects here. On the product, you'll need to provide the 5 fields that I've shown here as with read access. By default, they aren't on there. So you want to make sure you check that as you go and touch the object for overall read permissions for this. And the last one is if you're using any product variations or parent-child products here, you will need to go and enable read access to the product attribute object with any field that you've custom created. But if you're not using that, then you don't need to worry about going there. All right, so now we know what we're actually doing at a high level here. What we'll do is we'll come down to object settings right here. And what you'll do for all of these objects, and I'm just going to start with catalog, and we'll go to catalog here, and you will wait for it to load, click edit, and then just make sure the object permission right here is checked. And for product or product attribute, you'll want to make sure read access is also checked for the fields that I denoted earlier. And once you've done that, you have all the object and field level security set up you need. Now, once you've finished that step, you'll have finished all the steps that are here on the setup guide. These are all the main ones, but there are a few other ones that you'll need in order to provide overall access from a guest access perspective, and then eventually for checkout as well. And one of the first things you'll need to do is you'll need to hop over to setup here. And once you have setup open, you want to go to sharing, and you will need to set up a sharing rule against the catalog. And this sharing rule against the catalog will provide access to all of the products and records to be able visibility to those records so you can see as you're navigating throughout the store. So go ahead and you can quickly find this by typing in catalog here, and it's the second one down. You can see I've already done this one, but if we were going to go through this for the first time here, we'd provide a name. We'd say we want to give access to the user, the guest user access here, and then we want to scroll down, and you would choose name equals, and then whatever the name of your catalog is. That's pretty easy to find. All you need to do is hop back over here. You'll need to go up into catalog here and find your B2C catalog. So you have multiple catalogs in here. Make sure you grab the right one. Mine's called Tiny Homes B2C catalog. They're pre-generated, so it's pretty easy nomenclature to find here. And then you drop that right in here, and then you'd share it with your B2C site user and provide it read access and click save. So once you've saved this, what I suggest doing is going back to your store over here and go to your storefront and then go to search and then just do a full rebuild on the search index. I've noticed, setting up a couple of these that sometimes it just needs a republication in order for, guest users to be able to have full access to your site. Once you've done that, then what you'll be able to do is get your URL from your actual storefront, go into probably an incognito browser would be the easiest way to do this, and drop that in, and you should be able to see everything as a guest user. So let's go ahead and do that for mine. So in my B2C storefront, it basically is your instance domain up there plus the abbreviation for your site. So mine's Tiny Homes B2C, and you can drop that in, and you should be able to get access to the home page now when you first load. If you didn't set something up correctly, it will automatically direct you to a login page, which means you've missed one of the previous steps or something is going awry here. But if everything is set up correctly, you'll get dropped into the home page. Now, the real test here is when you go to products and making sure that you actually have access to the actual products. And you can see that mine are showing here. It's important to note, that you have the actual prices on here. And when you actually go into one of the items, that you're able to click Add to Cart. And this Add to Cart, if everything is set up correctly, will allow you to add a cart as a guest user. Now we've just added this front door to our cart, so we can hop over to View Cart here, and we'll be able to see that a front door is in here, but I'm not logged in. And that's one of the key differences here. So what does this actually look like inside of Salesforce? If I don't have this associated with an actual user, a contact and a user that we've set up previously, what does it look like? So now we're back here inside of our instance, and why don't we hop over to carts, and we should be able to see a lot of different carts in here. So if we just do a refresh here, if we get the last cart that was created here, this is our cart that we just created. Let's hop into this, and we can see that the owner is myself, and that's because inside of Experience Cloud, that default owner was set to me. But as I mentioned, you can set that to whoever you want as long as they're an admin. The second thing that is interesting here is the account is this Tiny Homes B2C guest buyer profile, which isn't a typical account. So there's a little bit of a Salesforce magic going on here. It's not a typical account that we're actually attaching it to. But then you can see everything else about it is pretty much the same. It has all the attributes we expect on here. It has the active status. It has the fact that it has a product related. It's already created the default delivery group for me. So pretty much everything else stays the same, but I did want to call out those two distinctions of how this actually works. And now this cart is valid for the next 7 days. So if I were to, abandon it for 7 days, I'd have to come back and re-add it. But as long as you keep your session and cookies the same for end users, and then you don't remove those, they'll be able to come back and be able to reuse that cart. All right, so at this point, we've provided access to our guest users so they can see the site and see products. And we've been able to see that a user can go to cart and be able to add items to that cart. So that's great. The next step here is checkout. So of course, for any storefront, we're going to need integrations in order for our checkout to be successful. So you will want to make sure that you go over into administration and you go to tax, and you provide a integration for tax, shipping, and card gateway. You will need all three of these set up in order for us to proceed through any type of checkout, but also for our B2C guest checkout here as well. So if you're not familiar with how to set these up, you can visit one of my previous videos that I'll link up here in the top right, and I'll help you kind of set up the basics here. You will need to do a little bit of an adjustment here in order to make this work. But the first step is to make sure that you have everything configured here in order for checkout to even start to begin to work. The next thing I'll note is that there is just a little bit of configuration that we need to do in order to provide access to a couple of things. So I'm on the help page right here because there's a nice little help article in the B2B commerce and B2B2C commerce section underneath commerce checkout for guest shoppers. So if we scroll down here, you can see that there are really only a couple of things that we need to provide access to. First one is to provide read access to order delivery method. And so if we go over into our site again and go to buyer access, go back to our profile here with this handy little link, and then go to object settings, we'll want to make sure that we've provided that access to order delivery method, and you can see that mine is already set up with read access, so you'll want to make sure you go in there and click read, and once you have that done, the next step that it advises you to do is provide a sharing rule for order delivery method. And it's pretty explicit on how to set this up. But if I just show you that real quick, you can go over to your setup menu, go back to sharing here, and then find the order delivery method down at the very bottom section here, and you can see that I follow those instructions and shared it with that guest user and provided reaccess. So those are the two kind of pre-steps in order to get access all figured out. But then there's one additional step you have to take here, and that is to modify the get order delivery method. So let's actually open up our code and look at this. So the out-of-the-box one that comes with the Git repo, which I'll link here in the description down below, but you can also find it in the integration video as well. The default one does a couple of extra things. It not only provides the order delivery method when you go into checkout, but it also creates one if one doesn't exist. Now, this doesn't work in a guest scenario because guests don't have the ability to create these records. It just isn't possible with the data model and the sharing setup here. And so what it advises you to do is to switch over to the get order delivery method, kind of the minified version of this. So you can see that really all it's doing is it's selecting the list of order delivery methods. And that is only possible because we just set up a sharing rule that provides access to our users to see those records. So in this instance, I just commented out this other one. You could delete it, whatever you'd like to do. And then you provide this one here, and you've now followed all of the steps that are in here. However, I will note that I ran into a couple of issues on the field access level. So I'll pop back open my instance, and in a couple of the queries that are used throughout this delivery integration right here, and the tax integration, sync tax in my case, a couple of these queries had enforced security on these queries, and that was producing an error for inaccessible fields. And so just because this is a demo instance, I took out the with enforced security from these queries, and everything started working correctly. However, you could go back and start providing the right field level access to these queries to make sure that the user can actually get this information correctly. So that is one additional step that I noticed that wasn't in the help documentation. But once you've gone through both the tax and the delivery or shipping one and taken those out or modified the field level security to provide access, your checkout should be ready to go through a full guest checkout. Now we're back here on our guest cart that we set up earlier. Now let's go ahead and click checkout here, and if everything has been set up correctly, we should be able to see the guest component that shows up here if this is a guest checkout experience. It's a little bit different than the standard one that we've kind of seen previously with the new LWR templates, but it does provide the access to kind of enter your email address, first, last name, all the details that you need for shipping, and be able to proceed through each of these sections. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in some of these real quick so we can proceed on. All right, so once you proceed past that first step, you can see that it's taken my shipping address, and we've been able to proceed past that first section. Now, if you have some issues with inaccessible fields and you didn't follow those instructions there, it will at that time give you an error, and you'll need to go fix those before you can proceed past that first step. But once you've moved past that first step, that basically means all the integrations have worked as expected, and you have all the information needed for the sections down below. So now that we've done that, we'll go ahead and click accept here. This is the custom section we've been working on through a couple of the other videos, which if you're interested, you can go watch. And then you'll click next, and we have our two shipping methods, which you can see are 1 and 2 here. These are pulling from the order delivery methods that we had previously shown, and one of the reasons why you need that sharing rule. But let's go ahead and click one of these. Now we're on payment here, and you can see I put in a fake credit card. I'm going to go ahead and fill in the rest of these. Now that I have that filled in, I'm going to leave the address checked as same as shipping address. And if everything else with the payment integration is working as expected, we can click place order here, and we should be able to proceed through and create an order for our guest user. Let's go ahead and jump back to our instance and see what this looks like. All right, we're back in Salesforce Mojo here, and we can see our latest order was created by test guest, which is the user we created here. You can see that it's created the order for us. It's attached the items that we wanted in here. And it's also at the same time created an account for us. And this is a person account, not a typical business account. And so we might explain a little bit more of that in other videos, but that is one of the key distinctions here with these B2C setup. So if we go back over here, you can see that the shipping address is on here and the order payment summary has successfully been authorized as well. So that concludes our setup of the D2C, B2C, whatever you want to refer to it as, setup of both Access for guest users and also Checkout for guest users. I went through some of those steps pretty quickly. If you have any questions, put those down in the comments here. There are some nuances with the objects sharing, and you need to make sure you tie all these together correctly in order for it to work. But hopefully this was instructional and helpful for you. Feel free to like and subscribe to the channel if we're providing value, and thanks for watching.